Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ready or Not podcast. My name is Greg.
And my name's Maggie.
And we are a couple of people that are together. And we've been together for almost
2.5 years.
2.5 years now. And we've had this idea in mind for quite a while. And we've tried. Let's just be honest. We've tried to do it, and we've thought about it, but we never really went through with it. We would do an episode here or there, and it would never go anywhere. And not that we ever posted. I mean, nobody's ever seen it. Those files are long gone. But I think it's finally a time in our lives. I feel like this is the perfect time to start our podcast.
Yep, I think it's like a nice fresh start. We've actually done this first episode, 3 times now?
This would probably be 5. Yeah.
So I think at this point in our lives, we're at a good schedule where we actually have a day every single week that we can dedicate to sitting down and actually recording these.
Yeah.
So I think we're at a good spot right now.
Yeah, and I mean, so the Ready or Not podcast is something we came up with probably almost a year ago.
Yeah.
Now, we have a website that we have the domain to, yet it's supposed to be a blog site, and I think Maggie has a bunch of plans to post on there once we get it up and running. I have some stuff that I do. I stream on Twitch. That's about it. I don't have social media whatsoever. But we have a TikTok and an Instagram and a Twitter, and then Maggie has her own personal stuff. If you want to share any of those later on, we can. But I think it's something that we want to build, and the reason we decided to do this was not because we think that our relationship is perfect by any means of the imagination. I think that we just have a lot of life experiences, especially with the last 2.5 years that we've been through, everything else leading up to that 2.5 years. That really gives us some good insight to be like, hey, this is possible for people who are in crappy situations.
Oh, absolutely. And by any means, that sounded so funny when you said, we have a life experience from the past 2.5 years, and that seems very minuscule compared to people that have been together for 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
But, I don't think of it as the quantity over the quality. I think it's that. Exactly. Yeah. Actually, I think we have been through a lot, almost 2 decades worth of shit within the past 2.5 years.
I don't think we ever intended to fast track our relationship. I mean, of course, we were, 2 years, engagement, marriage, that stuff kind of makes sense. That's usually the case. But I think we've experienced a lot that most couples experience over 5, 10 years. We've experienced in 2.5.
Oh, exactly. And I don't think we're special by any means.
Oh, no. I mean, this is I think that for a lot of people.
This is something just for us to do and enjoy, and maybe just kind of offer some comedic relief for anybody else going through something similar.
Yeah, I mean, we've experienced a lot, and I think it's one of those good things I feel with this podcast is that we're not really offering you relationship advice. Honestly.
We're not licensed. We're not.
Well, I'm not yet, and we'll explain that. But we're not offering relationship advice. We're offering here's an inside look to a healthy. I feel like we have a healthy relationship.
I think we have a very healthy relationship.
I don't think we have this toxic relationship where it's like, hey, everything looks good on this camera or behind this mic, and then out.
And then in reality, we're beating each other up upstairs.
Yeah, and then in a year we'll get divorced. Yeah. I don't see it as that. And that's one thing that when we went to do this podcast, we're like, hey, let's make sure our relationship doesn't come about the content.
Yeah.
Because I feel a lot of couples get into that, especially when they create content.
Oh, absolutely. And I think at first it's supposed to be fun and what do you guys want? And of course we want to know what you guys want to hear our perspectives on. But our perspectives are exactly that. It's our perspectives. And you have every right to agree, disagree, be like, you're wrong. It's okay.
Yeah. Post and ghost is what I say. I mean,
absolutely.
We're going to post it. We're going to read comments if any ever come in, because again, we're pretty new to this whole realm.
And take that feedback and use it constructively, but I don't want it to become something where we change, where our relationship becomes the content.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We use our inside to create what we've gone through, but we don't use the views changing our relationship. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know it's content's the content and our relationships are our relationship. Mm-hmm. I think that's the most important factor that we're really trying to balance here. But anyway, welcome to the Ready or Not podcast. I am Greg. This is Maggie. And I'm going on 27 now. Maggie's going on 23.
Yep.
And like I said, we've been together about 2.5 years. I'm finishing up school in about 7 months.
Yeah, I mean, well, not finishing. Just finishing the first
Finishing
part.
my first degree in psychology. So I'm going to be a psychiatrist, like I said, not licensed yet. That's my goal. Maggie?
I am in nursing school. I have been in nursing school for a long time.
That's debatable. Depends on how you look at it. You were in nursing school, then you took a break, and you went back to nursing school.
Yes. So I'm actually in my first semester of this associate's degree. Starting over again, but really I've done this before. So I will be graduating in 24.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. And I'm originally from Ohio, Maggie. Where do you consider your
I block out South Carolina from a lot of my
Maggie's,
memory. So I actually say that I'm from Virginia.
Maggie's from Virginia.
Even though I only lived there for like 4 years and spent the first 15 of them in South Carolina.
So Maggie's from Virginia and I'm from Ohio. And we met on a website or an app. Because is there a website for it too?
No, it's just an app. It's Bumble.
It's Bumble.
So it's basically the nicer version of Tinder.
I mean, I'm pretty sure at this point that most people who probably listen to this podcast know what Bumble is. Because I mean, it's part of everyday, like dating apps are just part of everyday life now. Mm-hmm. I think that's how most people meet but I still get shocked. Like when people say like, oh, I've met online, I'm like, oh, which site? And by the site they go off, I'm like, oh, this probably isn't going to last. Like that's,
I don't think that at all. I've been seeing a lot more people getting married that have met on Tinder.
Oh, really?
Yes, I've seen it all over my For You page. People that, everyone, like, in the comments, everyone's like, oh, so is everyone meeting their soulmate on Tinder now? I think it's just one of those things, like, it's evolving, because not everybody is in that hookup culture.
Yeah.
That was so prevalent, I feel like, when I was emerging from high school to college.
So you think, like, maybe
I think people are starting to settle down.
Do you think the same people who were on there are starting to settle down, or do you think that it's become more of the trend has passed? You know, it was new, it was exciting. All the people were on there trying to hook up. All the people were on there trying to get together on all this new sites. And then as the time went on, those people kind of faded away.
I think it's a little both. I think after COVID and everything, everyone's kind of lonely. So, I mean, there's still plenty of people that are hooking up just to hook up. And that's never going to change. And that's not just a trend. Like, that's...
I mean, there's probably like...
Some people don't want relationships, and that's totally fine. I think, but I feel like there's more of a surplus of people wanting relationships that are kind of taking to the apps because there's no other way to meet people.
Yeah, I mean, and hookup culture is always going to be a thing, I think. I mean, there's like 50 single moms in my area, right? Like, we're probably, I'm just saying, like, it's definitely prevalent. But, again, I think you see a lot of aspects of, I didn't know that about Tinder, so that's interesting that that's becoming more of a thing, because like I said, my judgment was basically like, oh, on Tinder, yeah, I don't see that one lasting.
Well, so I will say, like, in my bridal group chats, I do see a lot of people that are incorporating, like, the flame from Tinder.
Oh, okay.
That are like, oh yeah, because we met on Tinder. And I'm like, oh wow, how weird. Like, I've only seen a few people that have met on Bumble, or like fewer than I've seen on Tinder.
Yeah. Do you think that maybe you see more people, and this is just like, I know we're going off topic of what the podcast is, but this is like, we need to fill some time here because it's the introduction and we need a full episode. So this is more of a conversation piece. And this isn't what the most podcast is going to be, but it's going to be about a bunch of stuff. But question for you. Do you think you're seeing more prevalent because more people use Tinder than anything else?
I think people use Tinder more than anything else. I think Tinder has been the standstill. They advertise really well. Tinder always is using influencers like Drew. Like,
yeah, you're the lady you like, yeah.
Yes, the good Drew. She did a sponsorship like at Coachella for Tinder.
Oh, really?
So like they're finding people that are relatable, that people like, to do kind of like an advertisement for them.
Still think that movie Smile, which I've not seen.
I haven't seen that yet.
I think that was some good advertisement.
They did. But I think for Bumble really more focuses on the relationship aspect of things. So if you see ads for Bumble, which I see very few of, they're always we hit our 1 year thanks to Bumble.
Yeah.
Or and you can even submit stuff to Bumble to be like, we had a baby thanks to Bumble. Like, you know what I mean? So I think Tinder
Bumble
has more of like an ad, like presence than like Hinge or Bumble.
Well, because Tinder was one of the first ones to really get into that group. I mean, that's what you see, like, even though MySpace kind of failed out, but that's why MySpace was so popular at the time, because it was like one of the first ones. And we've seen a lot of that. Anyways, going
back to it.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, are we done?
Yeah, no, okay. I'm good. Thanks. No, we have time. We can fill. But no, so going back, like you said, podcasting. Maggie has a huge list of topics she would like to discuss, and I'm more off the cuff, so my thing is like, oh, what do you feel like talking about today? So this is a good way to where Maggie can write the podcast, I can still kind of go to the beat of my own drum and stuff like that. I've never been one to do a script. Whenever I've done anything, I don't like scripting it. I don't like writing it.
Well, I'm not scripting it per se. I just like to know going in.
You like to have an outline.
Yes, an outline. I like to know what we're doing, what we're talking about, kind of some main points I want to hit, because I don't feel like I'm going to get my point across unless I refer back to that. Yeah. I even do that in my TikTok videos. I have to make a little to-do list, like to go in order of what points I was trying to hit. And maybe that's my speech class.
Possibly. I mean, to be honest with you, I never was in that mindset. I've always been more of just, hey, let's just wing it. And then there's going to be times where it's like, I don't know what to talk about. But I think that's where it's good to have this conversation and dialogue to where you can present your thing, and I can kind of just go off on that, and we can kind of work together on that.
Absolutely.
So, topics wise, this is going to be basically a conversation podcast where we kind of reach topics, experiences, and we can, and it's not going to be just about relationship stuff. I think it's okay to bring in parenting styles. I think it's okay to be bringing in, emotional stability, mental health, and just every aspect of life in general. This is more of not even just giving a dive into our life, but being like, hey, there's other people out here who are really struggling and really trying to keep it together.
Oh yeah, and I think like, as we're sitting here talking, like, I'm thinking of even more things to talk about, like, not just surrounding a relationship, but, like, what our lives were like before we met each other. Like, yeah, we could talk about relationships that we had prior to meeting. Mm-hmm. We could talk about, what it was like in our childhood, what it was like, going through all these different life experiences, because even though Greg and I grew up kind of differently, we did have a lot of similar life experiences, I feel like. There's also some other more emotional topics I want to touch on, like, Greg and I did do couples counseling one time. It was kind of a joke, but it wasn't a joke that we did it. It was a joke that the therapist didn't take it as seriously as I wanted her to. And, there's other things to touch on, like, us dealing with infertility and us dealing with, wedding planning and just doing all of the life things at one time. Which is by no means no one's fault but our own.
No, and that's, and Maggie is very much here and now. Let's get it done. I'm ready for it. Do it now. And I'm more or less like, most things I'm like that. But when it comes to life things, I'm like, let's progress naturally. And
you're making me sound crazy.
You're not crazy. I just think you're ready for these markers to be hit to move on to the next one. So you're like,
I'm very happy where our life is. I think these are goals that I want to hit, and there have been other milestone blockers in the way.
Yeah.
Like, things that should be easy that aren't easy.
Yeah, that's the case. And I think there's a lot of things that I think will be good for us to talk about here. Like, I also want to talk about uncomfortable conversations that most people have on a day-to-day basis. I think there's a lot of negativity going on in the world, and it's no longer okay to have, like, I wouldn't say unpositive conversations or not favorable conversations, but these awkward ones to where it's like, I work in a hospital. Maggie also works in a hospital, and my views don't line up with the views that the people I take care of. So it's very odd when I have these older Christians and, older Republican Christians or whatever, and they're bringing up politics to me and they're making these comments and I don't align with a lot of them. And then the same thing with like religion, like I'm going to pray for you and this and that. And as an atheist, and that's like nothing against if anybody's religious here, but as someone who doesn't believe in God, it's always like, thanks, but I don't want to be like, well, God's not real and slap him across the face. Like, I want to just be like, I wish there was, the problem is I work in an environment where I'm not allowed to have an open dialogue. And I think it's okay to have an open dialogue. Don't just shout down on somebody else's views. Even if you disagree with them and you think they're horrible and you think they're wrong, I think it's always important to listen to the other side just to see, okay, does any of this make sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's different, though, in our workplace because at the end of the day, it's not about us. It's about our patients. So, like, as, you know, in the floor you work on, if somebody were to come to you and be like, can you believe this? You just say, nope. You just move on. Like, yeah. Because it's not about you. It's not about you educating them on something other than their health. Mm-hmm. So I get what you're saying, though.
No, but here's the difference, I think, between mine and your unit when it comes to that. Your unit, you got somebody for maybe, 2 weeks max? 2 weeks?
Less, for babies?
Less, yeah.
We get people for 2 days.
But I'm saying, like, max. Like, what is the max person you've ever had?
A mom or a baby?
A mom.
A mom for 4 to 5 days.
4 to 5 days max. Now, and a baby can stay there for, like, months, right?
It depends.
Okay.
Yes.
So, what I'm saying, though, is my patients, since I work on the unit I work on, we have people for sometimes 2 months at a time. So, like, you really get to know these people. You get to have conversations. They get to know a little bit about you because, like, you're just talking, you know, and that's important. They know who's taking care of you. I mean, I've had people tell me, oh, I feel real comfortable with you because I get to know you. Like, and that's great. But at the same time, you know, I walk into a room and every channel is the same channel, and I won't name channels here right now and here, so we don't get that.
It's an entertainment channel now.
It's just the same channel. And I remember I walked in, I didn't even think, subconsciously, I didn't even think about it. I walked into another guy's room and he had a completely different news channel. I was like, oh my God. I said, you're the only person who doesn't have that on. He started laughing. I was like, and he was just laughing. He goes, oh no, I can't stand those idiots over there. And I just,
but you can't like say like, oh, I agree with you or I disagree with you.
Yeah.
You just have to say, oh, haha. Like, you can't.
And then I'll walk in with these people who have this certain news program on, and they're like, can you believe this? They're torturing this man. And I'm like, are we serious right now? Like, and I just want to be like, you wipe your own ass. Like,
no, I think I still take care of my patients.
I take care of my patients perfectly. I've never had one patient
even though
complaint.
I don't agree.
Never had one patient complaint.
Because I used to pick up on a floor similar to Greg's. And there was a woman, and TLC was on, and it was, I can't remember which show it was. I think it was like Smothered or something, but it was a lesbian couple.
Yeah.
Who were getting pregnant, and the whole premise of Smothered is someone's mom is too, like, close, whatever. So the patient, I was helping her up to the bedside commode, and she goes, can you believe this? 2 women having a baby? Disgusting. And I said, well, I don't really find that disgusting, but, you know, you're allowed to have your own opinion. That's the only time I've ever really, said anything like that, because she kept going on and on about how that's not right. 2 women shouldn't have babies. And it took everything in me not to be like, I'm bisexual. I actually like women too. But, no, and I just told her, I said, well, you're allowed to have your own opinion. Would you like me to change the channel? And she'd be like, no.
Like, well, okay, some people just like to live in that world.
They like to live in the, how dare you? But at the same time, I still provided her with the utmost care and consideration. And she didn't even hear my comment where I said, well, I don't agree, but because she kept asking me, like, what were my thoughts? What were my thoughts? And I'm like, I don't agree with you, but that's okay. And she just, well, anyways, I don't think, like, she didn't really care, but, I just think that's funny, and I think about that all the time, because she didn't really care what I had to say, but it was still nice because she still loved my presence, and still was like, oh, thank you so much for taking care of me today.
Oh, I mean, it's the thing where it's like, there's a lot of people I disagree with, and I would have some people who just push the thing, and they just, that's all they watch, and all they watch is the news, and the news, and the news, and even some of these people aren't even that old. Some of them are just like, this is like what they grew up in. Mm-hmm. So it is nice to see. It's so weird because I remember it's not something I probably like. I've never been walking through the store wearing a mask, and which I don't really anymore, but at the time, and your dad's had no experience, but I've never had the experience where people will stop you and be like, take that off, you sheep, and whatnot, and I've never had that experience. But now, working in this setting, I've had those sort of experiences.
I've had patients tell me I didn't have to wear it, but it was like as of like I can tell you're hot. Like, you can pull it down in here. It's okay.
Nobody's ever said anything about my mask at work. I will say that. More or less, it's been just about their ideals and like, and them just like just like pecking you with the same topic, and you're just like, yeah, and you're just like,
anyways, let me just wipe your butt so I can
just trying to change their linen, and you're like, yeah, it's the most awkward bed change in my life.
But anyways, I think having those uncomfortable conversations is okay to have sometimes, like, while we're here. Because Greg and I don't agree on everything, believe it or not.
We don't.
There's a lot of things we oppose views on, and that's okay. Yeah. Like, it's not like the problem is people are afraid to have opposing views, but the thing I see of it is we can have opposing views because we have the same ones in those core values that we can both agree on. Mm-hmm. We have the same views on having a family and having, what we expect out of our relationship and things of that nature. But
a lot of stuff today is, and I don't want to get into politics right now, but a lot of things today is linked to your political views. Like, a lot of people just judge you like, oh, you're this supporter, you're this, or it's a lot of labeling.
Oh yeah. Well, when I was on Bumble, they would have like what your party was.
Yeah.
And if you were very hardcore that party, I'd be like, left. Like, I didn't want to hear it. Because even if it was just there, I don't mind that. But if you're in your comments like, this isn't my president, and, I'll never, ever trust a man with the name with a B. Like, things of that nature, like, gotta go. Yeah. I can't deal with it. Like, I would rather, like, just not talk to you. And I had the same thing with people that were like, all their pictures were them holding a doobie.
And it's so odd to me because I think one side creates the other side. Personally.
I think so too.
I think it's like somebody goes so far this way that somebody's like, well, that's extreme, so I'm going to go so far that way. Mm-hmm. And then it just becomes like, it just becomes this parting ways. But that's one. Politics is something that I do. We can cover one day, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I think it's okay to have those opposing conversations. I think that's why this podcast we want to make. We don't really want that filter. I mean, we really just want to be like, hey, this is how real people talk. This isn't like the robotic. Hey, like, today we're going to teach you how to do self-meditating journey to better your relationship. Like,
shut up. He's because I listened to those before bed. Not the relationship ones, but I listened to one before bed. I lay there, I let my phone sit on my chest, and I repeat it.
But no, I mean, but there's a lot of things where it's podcasts that people make, and they just get to, like, straight facts, straight points. They don't offer any real insight into like real relationships. Like, oh, how is your relationship doing this week? How is your relationship doing this week? There's weeks that me and Maggie argue more than we do any other weeks.
And those are really sad weeks.
Those are not the greatest weeks, but I think it should be for us to come on here and explain, hey, yeah, we haven't had a good week. It's okay.
It's okay, because one thing I don't want is to create an image that isn't true. Because truthfully, we're human. We have bad days. I have mainly bad days.
I mean, life is just full of bad days with a couple good ones.
And I mean, I have a lot of bad days, or like I'll, because I'm a person. It happens.
Yeah. And
I'm not going to come on here after going through something horrible and coming on and being like, I'm the happiest person alive. Like, because that's not true. No. And I think that's okay. And I think it's okay for us to come on here and be like, hey, we've had a shitty week. We literally fought every single day this week, but we're here now.
Yeah, we're here, and we're going to figure this out.
And we're going to work it out.
This is a good open dialogue for us to take an hour out of our day to just talk about, even if it is a topic-based topic, it gives us something to talk about, and it gives us a way to go more in-depth in our...
It also gives us a way to connect a little more.
Yeah.
I think, so this is not sponsored. I wish it was, but
no, we're not.
We use something called the Paired app, and that asks us a question every single day, and it's always something that like you don't normally think about all the time. No. Like it asks us. I don't even remember. The question today was like, "What is your description of a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
And I was like, huh. And that gives us an opportunity to not only, like, explain what we feel about it, but see how our partner feels about it, too.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're silly with it. There was one we were both being really silly about. I don't remember what it was. I think it was 3 things our partners don't know about us. And he was like, my love to dance.
Yeah, it was like, because honestly, we are pretty much an open book. I don't think there's anything that we don't know about each other. I think we find things out that we didn't, like, of course there's things that we don't know, right? I think, but we find things out, like telling stories from our childhood, or telling stories from, like,
we're like, no way.
We're like, oh, you were that? Like, you did that? But not, like, we know everything important about each other.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we know, I mean, Maggie knows what I ate last Sunday, probably, even though she probably doesn't remember it, but, like, those are things that we find out about. Like, we know about each other.
And veggies that I forgot we had for dinner.
Yeah, and it's just, it's simple stuff like that. And I think, I think another good topic would be health and fitness. Like, the ability to work out while maintaining a relationship and maintaining school and maintaining a crazy work schedule. Because we're both full-time students with full-time jobs. And a full-time relationship, and a full-time wedding we're planning, and
full-time cats.
and full-time 2 cats, which we have 2 cats who are currently fighting each other right now. It's a great time to watch as we're sitting here recording them slap the crap out of each other. But there's a lot to talk about here.
Oh, yeah. And I think that, as time goes on, maybe no one will ever hear this, and maybe some people will, and they'll take something from it, or they'll actually give us feedback like, hey, why don't you guys tell us about, your first date? Or why don't you tell us about
your last date?
Tell us about the day you decided you didn't want to be together
Tell
anymore.
us the day you decided you were just better off friends.
Tell us the day that you became just roommates. But no, I think that this will be a good experience, and I'm very excited to actually get, things rolling.
Yes.
I think this episode was meant to be the story of us so far, but
was it?
I think we talked about it being like a timeline, like oh, we met here and we got together, and
I mean, we have time.
I know. I was just thinking about it. I was like, oh, like,
okay.
We only really said, like, we're in school and our
yeah. So,
ages.
I mean, okay, so we could just kind of stop going off on little rails and stuff. But I think it was good to know, like, what to expect.
What you're getting into.
What you're getting into. A bunch of knuckleheads just rambling on about topics. But
the way I explained it to my clinical group today was, Greg and I just bullshit in front of a mic for about an hour.
I mean, that's a good description. But no, I mean, I have no problem with the timeline. I think the timeline thing's a good idea. Because, I mean, our way of meeting was, I can't say unconventional. It's very common nowadays.
So, Greg and I met during COVID.
Yeah.
We matched on Bumble. What was it, May?
It was in May, yes.
It was like end of May. No, middle of May.
Middle of May.
Because we met for the first time in the end of May.
May 30th.
Yeah. So we matched on Bumble, and I think Greg said the one thing that was really interesting was I asked him if I could call him.
Yes, that was very
because
odd to me.
I don't like messaging on the app. Like, versus texting, you could just swipe and respond. But, like, on the app, you had to open it up, and it just was a mess. And I didn't want to Snapchat. I wanted to hear his voice. I wanted to talk to him, and so he can pick up what I'm putting down. And so I wanted to call him, and he said yes. And we were on the phone for, 2 hours. It was a really long time.
Yeah, for our first call.
Yeah.
And then we ended up talking on the phone almost every night after that till 3 in the morning.
Oh, yeah. We would stay up, fuck up the sleep schedule just to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was a live-in nanny. And I had been for, a year and a half at that point.
And I was a live-in caregiver and a streamer.
For his mom, yeah. And we ended up meeting, 2 weeks after we matched?
2 weeks, yeah.
And I think from that moment, I just knew, because I was casually dating, I was dating other people because I had just gotten out of a relationship, and I didn't want to jump into something because I had done that forever, where I just went from relationship, took a little break, a new relationship. So I wanted to go on dates with a couple people at the same time and just see how that felt. And I had already gone on a date with 2 other people, and then went on a date with Greg, and I was like, yeah, y'all are done. I just knew, this is who I wanted to be with. I don't know how or why. I think it was just something. Something about you.
So I was casually talking to people. I never went on a date. You were actually my first date from Bumble. Okay. Or actually an app in general.
Yeah.
And I was dating my PS4 at the time and just playing Call of Duty nonstop. And yeah, that was pretty much, I was streaming a lot and I did really well there. And I wish the site never would have went down. I still am a little salty about that because that would have probably been my career right now, which kind of sucks. But the site went down. I gave up and so we ended up meeting. And
it's funny, we actually met in the middle because he was in Ohio and I was like in the middle of PA.
Yeah.
So we met, it was like an hour and a half drive for me. And like a 40-hour drive for him. We met in the middle, and it's actually where we currently live, which we didn't even realize it until I had moved here.
Yeah. It seems weird that if we ever leave this place, it just feels like this place was kind of just like, this is where we met, like, and then we accidentally moved here, like, because I don't remember, like, we met here. And then
we would just go back and forth after that. Like we didn't really meet.
I went to your place, and then we did one more stay up there.
Yeah.
And then because I was in the middle. And then you came to my place.
We stayed in Boardman at one time. Do you remember?
Yeah, we stayed up
and then we
were just back and forth.
And then
because you stayed at mine more than anything at that point.
Because you couldn't stay with me.
Yeah, and then you got your own place.
Yep.
And then I was staying.
Which it was funny because it was kind of like a last minute thing. Like, hey, we don't need you anymore. So I had to find a new place to live. And so I ended up. It's technically the same area, but it's not at the same time. Like it's same area, but I lived like maybe right outside of this actual town.
Yeah.
And I remember we were driving to go get stuff and we passed this Walgreens and I said, wait a minute, this is the same Walgreens we had stopped in.
And I was like, no, it's not.
And it was.
And it was.
We were like, no, because there's the Chipotle and there's the mall parking lot. And there's like, and so it was such a huge, like, oh my God, no way. I live here now, like, where we freaking met the first time. So that kind of fast forward a little bit, but we met and this is one of my favorite stories. A couple weeks later, like we had only gone out a couple of times at that point or seen each other a couple of times.
Yeah.
And Greg had come over and I was like laying on the floor. We were just talking and I remember he looked at me and he just told me he was just in love with me. And then that's just like, I'm gonna cry. It just was such like a good moment. And even though we had only really known each other for like a month, it was still like such a beautiful, like, wow, this man really loves me. And, we made it official and we're actually getting married on that date now.
We're getting married on our anniversary.
On our anniversary. So.
But yeah, we ended up moving together and then like, our story is so complicated because
so many twists and turns.
All of our good moments have this asterisk attached to it. And I think that's something that I want to go in.
Like what?
like just like our first date.
Okay.
Our first day moving in together.
Okay, yeah. We'll have to go into so I can give you a little sneak peek. So our first date, Greg was on the phone with his mother, because they have a trauma bond. And she called me a whore with STDs. Yeah. And I cried eating my Alfredo. So, like, it's such a magical first date, but then I always remember in the back of my head, like, oh yeah, that was the first time Greg's mom, like, openly expressed that she fucking hated me.
Yeah.
So, there's so many more stories like that.
And then our move-in together, we have my mom overdosing.
So, I mean, and this is no way, shape, or form trying to, like, shit on your mom, but, like, I think, yes, there is that little, like, oh yeah, also this happened, but I think it's important that we don't recognize that. Like, when I think of that memory of us moving in together, I think of us moving in together.
Yes, yeah.
I don't think of, oh yeah, and Greg's mom tried to kill herself. Like, no. So I think, it's one of those things that we do focus more on the positives than we do the negatives. And I think that's really special.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we moved it. So I got my own place. And I wanted Greg to move in, like, right away, even though we'd only been together for, like, 6 months.
Yeah.
And he said, no, we set a timeline, like, I'll move in April, which at that point would have been, 10 months?
Yeah.
So, he did. He moved in end of April?
End of May.
End of May.
Well, yeah, because you were supposed to graduate in May, right?
Yeah.
So, end of April.
End of April. So, he moved in end of April, and we stayed in that apartment for 2 years.
2 years.
And then during that time, we'd gone through many job changes, many, visiting family and health change and life change and all of the things.
Bunch of changes.
And we just actually, then we got engaged on my birthday.
Yeah,
and it was, at that point, we had been together for a little over a year and a half. And celebrated our 2 years in June. And moved into a new place that we love.
A nice little townhouse.
Call our home. And we're planning our wedding and dealing with infertility and, just getting through school, and we're doing all the things. And there's more in depth to this timeline, I swear.
There's a big in depth to this timeline, and that's the thing that we wanted to cover in other episodes. Like, I feel like we want to.
You'll slowly get the whole picture.
You'll get the whole picture as we
progress.
Not only progress, but as we cover topics that played predominant roles in our lives, we'll be going more into these stories as these topics start to arise, and so does our stories with these topics. So I think that's important, and but that's kind of that's our little story, and a very, very good summary of it. But there's a lot more.
There's a lot of twists and turns.
There's turns. There's things that you might not expect. And then as you listen to 4 stories, you're like, oh, I can see where this is going.
Yeah. But I will say, out of all the things, we've had a really happy
I cannot complain.
I'm not even fake happy. I'm genuinely so happy and so in love with you.
In love with you.
And I think we're going to have a good life together. Us and the cat. Us and the cat.
Us and the cat.
And, grow our love, grow our family. But I think this is a good little step up.
This is nice to meet you.
This is nice to meet you. There's going to be so much more to come. And I'm so excited to really get into, the nitty and gritty. I feel like this is always the most awkward. It's just being like, oh, hi.
How do we fill time?
My name is so-and-so, and I'm this age. So I think the first episode is always the most awkward unless you start out with a bang, hey, this is us, and we're going to jump right into it, and we're talking about this. But I feel like this is more personable because then you can actually, hear our voices and recognize that, you're probably going through a lot of the same shit, too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And welcome all. Single, married, divorced, separated, joined together, gay, straight. It doesn't really matter. I think this podcast isn't just going to be for those who are in relationships.
This is for free for all.
This is it. We're just going to have a hell of a time.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm Greg. You can follow me on Twitch at Half Gallon. That's the only real social I have. Maggie's got a few socials. I don't know if you want to promote any of them right now, or
we can throw them in there. My stuff is all pretty much the same. My Instagram is Margaret Floyd 13, I believe. I think on TikTok I'm Magorific, and I also have another TikTok for Trying to Conceive, and I think it is Trying to Conceive Baby W, I believe. I'll have to double check that one.
Okay.
But, so lots of good things to come.
It'll all be linked in the descriptions wherever you find
We also have,
podcast.
Our page socials, which are, what are they?
Oh, yeah, it's at the Ready or Not, and then also, this is going to be linked to all one thing. I'm going to be tying my stream into this. I have my own podcast I want to start. It's going to be called Talking to Yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be more of a psychology podcast. I have already the logos worked out for it.
Stop it. You're an overachiever.
And I think I want to start that. But so it's going to be all under one umbrella, and it's going to be our company, and it's going to be called the IT Network. and you can live it, love it, laugh it, whatever you want to do. It's going to have to do with it. Just because I really like that name, and I've had it in my back pocket for a while. So this will be all in a wrap. So right now we do have an Instagram it's at the Ready or Not. Our website's at thereadyornot.com.
And that knot is with a K.
Yeah, K is with not
Ready
with
or Not, like you tie a knot.
Yeah. And then we also have our TikTok, which is at the Ready or Not. I actually think the only thing that is the It Network right now is our YouTube channel. Okay. So that's it. That's it for this episode. Thanks everyone for listening. If you didn't listen, I hope maybe one day this podcast catches your ear on another episode. You come back and listen to the first ever episode to kind of see, what's going to happen? Where did we go? Maybe we have a studio by the time somebody comes and listens to this. Maybe this is our actually business. What if this becomes our business? Whatever happens.
I think that would be fun and grand.
Whatever happens. We're just here to have fun.
Right now, yep. Just looking to have fun.
Thanks everybody for listening.
Yep, thank you again. I'm Maggie.
I'm Greg.
And thanks for tuning in to the Ready or Not.